And Greg joins us on loan from CBS Sports, NBA TV. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Dan. How you doing?
Good. All right, so you got all the information here. Like, tell me your Final Four.
Oh, I haven't picked the Final Four yet, Dan. I know you're going to find it hard to believe. Did Steve give you a Final Four yesterday?
Steve Kerr?
Without Arizona? Yeah.
He gave me his top 5 schools.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was more concerned with dancing around the Knicks job than he was giving me his Final Four.
Yeah, I had a feeling that might be the case. We had a lot of conversation about his potential future job this past weekend, calling a Big Ten championship.
Okay, if you were running TNT, would you start taking resumes for Steve Kerr's job at the network?
That's a great question. I would, I think anytime you run a huge corporation, it's always advisable to have contingency plans in place.
Okay.
So if I were, I would absolutely have contingency plans in place because you just never know.
Well, you played in New York, and I know that you can tell people about New York. It's like when you live in New York and you want to tell people about New York, people have their opinion already made up. If you're like, does Steve know what he would get into just coaching in New York, let alone coaching in the NBA?
I think he does. One, he played in Chicago for a lot of years, so you get, and you know as well as anybody, Chicago is a similar dynamic to New York in terms of the passion as a sports city, particularly as a pro sports city. They cover all the bases. They want to win as bad as anybody. Of course, they won a little more than most when he was there. But I do think he has an understanding of that, of how to deal with pressure as well. Guy's won multiple championships. He's played on great teams, not just in Chicago, San Antonio. He played on a great team in college. He's been around the game forever. So I don't think that's an issue, honestly. It's just more a matter of does it make time at this stage of one's life. And I think ultimately that Steve wants to be a head coach. And I've got to believe that he's going to have a conversation with the president of the Knicks at some point about the potential of that coming to realization here before next season.
If you could coach the Lakers or the Knicks right now, who would you coach?
Ooh, I would say, and I got to say this without bias, because, listen, I grew up a Laker fan as a kid, but I do think that the Knicks might have a better situation. And I say that only because I probably, even though he's never run a team, would trust Phil Jackson more than I would trust Jim Buss.
What about
based on what's happened over the last couple of years.
What about 76ers? If you could coach the Sixers, Lakers, or Knicks right now?
I don't know that anybody wants to coach the Sixers right now.
Yeah, but there's a lot of you got some talent coming in.
Yeah, tell me what you got.
Okay, you got
21 straight losses.
Well, I know, but you got to put up with that to get to the lottery. The key is you got to get one of those top 2 picks in the lottery. You got cap space.
I will say this to you, Dan. In all seriousness, This is not a transcendent draft. Like, everyone talks about this draft. It's a good draft. There's some really talented players, but you're not going to have guys who are going to come in and change the course of your franchise in the next couple of years. Like, you don't have a LeBron James in this draft. You don't have a Tim Duncan. You don't have a guy that's going to come in and double your win total. People don't have a good perspective. Think about how good Michael Carter-Williams has been this year. He's going to be Rookie of the Year probably.
Yep.
And they've lost 21 consecutive games.
Well,
you're going to get a young player. You're going to get a young player who, as talented as he is, he's still young. These kids right now aren't ready to change the face of your franchise. You're going to lose a lot of games next year. Unless you're a playoff team and you get the first pick. But if the top 2 picks, the teams they go to, I don't think are going to be very good next year.
But would you rather have the promise, or would you rather have those heavy contracts that the Knicks have, and even the Lakers have some of those as well? So you can clear your books.
Both those teams but Dan, both those teams have the opportunity to get good really quick. First and foremost, free agents will want to play in both places. Okay, there's the lure of the Lakers, and then there's the lure of Phil Jackson in New York. So you're going to have much more of an opportunity to participate in free agent. Both teams are going to be able to get a max guy after next season. Okay? Both teams are going to have a lot of money coming off the books this year. So you have a lot better opportunity to get good quick in L.A. and New York than you do in Philly. That's a challenge in Philadelphia, as is the case for a lot of these teams that aren't very good. At the end of the day, you got to have a great player from which to start. And at least in the Lakers and the Knicks case, they both have a great player. Kobe's a little older, obviously, but at least you have something to start with. You don't have that in Philly and in some of these other situations.
He's Greg Anthony from CBS Sports, NBA TV, joining us courtesy of UPS and the folks we use, Stats LLC. They're great. They help us with our stat of the day, joining us here on the Dan Patrick Show. When it comes to the tournament here, the media's never right. They don't get it right when they go, everybody loves Michigan State, which makes me nervous because now everybody loves Michigan State. Love the coach.
Yeah.
But when somebody says that in the office, boy, I love Michigan State, you know what I say? Can you name 2 players on the team? And the thing is, they go, no, but they're really good. And I go, okay, they can name Tom Izzo. I'm trying to figure this out of what is the true, opinion or strength of a team. If you're great at the end of the year, like Michigan State, or you've been consistent through the entire year. If you're the committee, what would you value more? Consistency, or that they were great for 2 weeks at the end of the year?
In terms of putting the seating together in the bracket?
Yeah.
I will say this. I think, and that's a great question, too, because this is where I think there's a disconnect for the fans. The way you're supposed to see, this is my philosophy, you don't pick the 4 best teams as 1 seeds. You reward the 4 teams that had the best seasons. And so that's why if you look at Florida, Arizona, you look at what Virginia was able to do in Wichita State. To me, they had the 4 best seasons. I mean, they had the best seasons. Florida won the conference and the tournament, and they had some quality wins non-conference. Arizona, similarly, they didn't win the conference tournament, but they had some really good wins non-conference. They also lost one of their best players and were able to rebound, and they won over 30 games. Wichita State, we talked about it, 34 wins. I don't care who you are. You win 34 consecutive in college and go undefeated. There's a reason you deserve a 1 seed. In Virginia, similarly, they proved it. They didn't have, the imbalanced schedule in the ACC hurts you a little bit, but they did rally. They did beat Duke in that tournament championship game, and that was kind of an exclamation point for them. And I think the fact that Michigan lost to Michigan State is the reason they ended up getting the 1 seed. So I think that's how you look at it. Even though those are the 4 1 seeds, I think you can make a case for a Louisville, a Michigan State. If Kansas is healthy, I think they're in that conversation. And Michigan even, and other teams that you could say are equally as good. It's just that they weren't rewarded. That's the thing with Louisville. Like, people are up in an uproar about Louisville, and I get it to a certain extent because I do think they're a much better team than a 4 seed, but they didn't have a quality non-conference win.
Yep.
They had opportunities. They lost all those games. And so that's my point about how the committee looks at it. They're ranking the value of your season. They're trying to reward the teams that had the best seasons as opposed to identifying. Then they say the tournament will identify the best team. We're just rewarding the teams that had the best seasons. And now let's go play the tournament. And if you're the best team, you're going to win the tournament.
But I still – Kansas doesn't have Joel Embiid, who's a great player, so they're not a great team going into the tournament. Doesn't mean they won't do damage or when they get him back, but I have to value – I want the best product on display as the top seeds. That's where Louisville has played great. Michigan State has played great. Villanova has not played great. There's certain teams, like St. Louis got a higher seed. I just think what you're doing at the end of the year – should have more value because you want the top seeds to do well. You want the big names to do well, the teams playing well. If you did well in December, or whenever a preseason tournament or something, it shouldn't count as much, in my opinion, as what you do at the end of the year. But that's just my take of momentum going in.
No, that's a great point, Dan. It's a great point. But you got to also – you play the whole season. It's no different than in football. In the NFL, when they seed you, some teams teams are playing much better at the second half of the season than they did the first half. But the record is the totality of the season, is it not?
But Michigan State got healthy, Greg. I have to factor in that they weren't healthy.
And they deserve that. Well, you do factor in. They got a 4 seed, but the seeding is based on the season, not on what I think. I thought coming into the year they were my pick to get to the Final Four and potentially win it. You know, they were ranked, I think, in the top 3. But they finished second in their conference by 3 games. And, the injuries play a role, but that's why they're not seeded 1. That doesn't mean they won't have an opportunity to win it. I don't think you can then, and even in St. Louis's case, look, St. Louis won the Atlantic 10. They got 5 at-large bids.
I know.
So you win a conference that got 6 teams in the tournament, you got to be pretty good.
Hey, stop yelling at me.
So I get that. It's hard with the seeding. That's why you got to use the TPI, Dan. See, this is good. You're the perfect person for the team performance index because you like to just focus on the quality and the consistency and the efficiency of a team, right? And forget about, well, this guy wasn't there, and so, but this is where the team is now, and that's the beauty of this whole thing. The TPI, it's funny, you look at the top 5 teams, they're Florida, Arizona, Wichita State, Louisville, and then Virginia. So 4 of the top 5 are 1 seeds. And again, it's telling you about the teams that have been the most efficient and consistent this year. But at the end of the day, you still got to go play. You're not going to avoid playing good teams in the tournament.
I know. I agree.
So, all this stuff, we're going to find out. And I will say this about the tournament, and you know this as well as anybody. More often than not, the best team doesn't win it.
All right. Before I let you go, will a 1 seed win the championship? Yes or no?
No. I'm on record. I didn't want to say that because I got to call the game, but I'm going to go because I'm talking to Dan Patrick. I'm going to say no.
Okay, but you were referencing the best team doesn't always win the championship. You're talking about Duke when UNLV lost to Duke that second year.
No,
is that what you're saying?
Even a lot, most years, really. Other than the last 2, because Louisville I thought was the best, as was Kentucky.
You hate Leitner. Go ahead, say it, Greg.
No, I love Leitner. Listen, I got a 7th grader who's a pretty good player, and he's already told me he's going to Duke.
Oh,
so
he's declared.
My wife went to Duke. My wife went to Duke from that school. I got all the Duke I can get. So I don't hate Duke. I would probably hate Duke had I not beaten Duke in a championship. See, I do have one, so it helps.
Hey, good to visit.
Lessen the blow.
Good to visit with you. Thanks for joining us, Greg.
All right, brother. Be good. We'll talk to you soon.
Greg Anthony, CBS Sports NBA TV.